Hello. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to assume I'm short enough to get away with it. Who's ready for a story? I'm presuming a lot of you have come from work or been working, so I hope you're happy to hear a story, because there's no way I can talk about the project without actually telling you a story. And that story really is about me and my motivations and what really led to what the project has become and what we're doing now, which is much bigger than me alone. So I was born in India, and that is pretty significant, which you'll come to know as I go around it, is that health has always been a very significant part of my life. As long as, my entire life, I've never been an incredibly healthy person. And especially coming from India, that has had a huge relevance in terms of being that I didn't get to go to school as a child because I was always ill, but that allowed me to look at different ways of working with the things that you already have, as well as thinking about making new things and putting it out into the world. So, as I said, I wasn't as cute as that. I wish I was. So I was really sickly as a child because I had really bad asthma, and for whatever reason, I just kept going in and out of hospitals for surgeries and whatnot, which is probably something I'll tell you if you want the gruesome details over a drink afterwards. But there is a significant part of my life when I was 16 when that's my attempt of making sure to not have a gruesome image, was, as I said, that I had really bad asthma for like my entire life, to the point that I either lived in the hospital or I lived at home, and those were essentially the two places I lived. And when I was 16, they found out that I had an infection that required them to do a lobectomy and render one of my lungs as basically useless, which is fine. It's not as dramatic as it sounds. As you can see, I look fairly normal, or I hope I do. So that basically, So that happened, and after that happened when I was 16, I recognized that, I did want to do things regularly, as everybody else did, but there's this huge leap that I had to make if I wanted to go to university or if I wanted to do things as everyone else. And I'm going to skip over a bit. Sorry. I'm going to skip over a bit just so I don't bore you. Before I talk about the project, that's kind of where I'm coming from in terms of looking at health issues. And right now, if you look at me, I have about 4 definitive autoimmune diagnoses that I live with. Just a show of hands, how many of you know what an autoimmune condition is? Oh, cool. Can anyone tell me what it is?
Is it when your immune system attacks, it's a part of the body, like a particular part of the...
Yes. Can you give an example of Okay, yeah, that's a good one. What do you think that entails?
Well, it could end up losing the thyroid gland, or it could end up not functioning. It's something like that really important part.
That is an excellent answer. I wish everyone answered like you. It just feeds into my tongue. That's really good, because as someone who lives with 4 different autoimmune diagnoses, it's really interesting for me to hear people talk about autoimmune diseases, including the doctors who have this particular very medical understanding of what it is. Perhaps it's your inflammatory markers, perhaps it is, how specific organs such as your thyroid glands are functioning and so on and so forth. For anyone wondering, I have ankylosing spondylitis, which is AS, asthma, Crohn's disease, and a few other things I won't remember. Anyway, So I did go back to, went to education, and I did my undergraduate, and I came to the UK to do my master's. And once I graduated, I realized that there's not a lot to do with a master's in cultural studies, but there's one of the things I did recognize was that what was most meaningful to me was how health was understood and what health meant to people at large. And especially we live in an age where this idea of health as a binary, where you're either healthy or unhealthy, or you're eating, you wake up in the morning and you go for a run, and then you eat salad for lunch and you're a super healthy person, or you eat fried food and chips and you're an unhealthy person. And I actually looked into what does medicine mean? What does medicus mean, and who is a physician? And it was really bizarre for me to find out that medicine actually is focused on the doctor, on the physician. So it's this attempt at helping cure something that initiates a curiosity to the doctor. And that makes a lot of sense to me now, knowing that, okay, so if I wasn't able to walk because they had to do, render one of my lungs not able to walk, that wasn't their concern. For the fact that they were able to make sure that I was alive, that was a success medically. So that really spawned an interest in me to look at how do we understand health, who is at the central focus, and what does this mean to healthcare, and what are these things that we take for granted where, yeah, sure, you can complain that, oh, I waited 6 months to get an appointment, but you don't really understand why that is, or what can we do to change this. So I asked this question about what would a patient-centric healthcare look like? This might sound really crazy because you think healthcare is for patients, who else would it be for? But when you actually think about it, especially when it comes to autoimmune conditions, healthcare is primarily designed in a way to keep you alive, and that is a success if you're alive, essentially. So let's say if you're unable to get out of bed, if you're unable to do anything ever, that's absolutely fine as long as you're alive. And I say this because I was it was in 2014 where I was actually told, don't work, you're not allowed to work because, you're too ill to work. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do? You can get benefits. And I was like, I'm not a British citizen, I can't get that, so what do I do now? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Oh, that's really excellent. So, thought long and hard about this. And what really began as a very personal sharing experience where I started writing about the experience that people don't often hear about, in the sense of how long does it take for me to actually get out of bed, and why do I cancel plans half an hour before I'm meant to, or I have Crohn's disease, why can't I eat at this super healthy vegan place? If you ever want to kill me, any of you, if I wasted your time, give me a carrot, that'll do it. But so I started the story and I started talking about myself and my experiences, and it spiraled into this place where I discovered, and I actually thought, well, wait, I'm not a freak. Well, I might be, but I'm sure there are other freaks. So there must be other people who relate to this, who have similar experiences. And I put out this call where I said, okay, so, if at the time I hadn't discovered autoimmune diseases, I didn't know any of this, and I said, if you have an invisible disease, I would like to share your story. And that was in 2014, and I've been doing it for over 2 years. And it's been really insane how many stories we've received over the past 2.5 years. And the first picture you see is about an artist who lives in LA, who'd be amazing for a laser talk, by the way, who's shown at museums and the web, the Museum of Modern Art and so on. He has Crohn's disease, and he essentially creates augmented reality works that showcase what it's like to live with Crohn's disease. And the second picture you see is about this woman who was a marathon runner who taught music, which required her to stand on her feet. She got Lyme disease and who had to be in a wheelchair, and she didn't know what to do. So she turned into this published children's novelist. Or the third image you see about this family who had to deal with this with a husband who suddenly had MS, and they didn't know what to do because he was a sole breadwinner. But in each case, there was this pattern that you could see where, as is often told with especially a chronic invisible condition, where it's I often feel really patronized when my when my family goes that's amazing, you woke up today before 9 a.m. Okay, that's great. Or yay, you went out today. But there's this overarching narrative that says, oh, despite of having it, you did this. So the story attempt, to which the project is now called Chronically Driven, is this idea of what if you take away despite of, and you said because of? That woman would never have become a published children's novelist if it wasn't for getting Lyme disease. Or Daniel Layton on top, he would have never become this incredibly amazing artist if he didn't have Crohn's disease. So how can you recognize what such a diagnosis could offer you that probably your doctors aren't telling you, your family loves you too much to tell you, but how can you come to recognize those things? Which is a very important question we need to ask ourselves, given the progressive rise in autoimmune diseases, which kills. Well, that's not really a nice thing to say. Why did I say that? Yeah, but which does actually kill more people than breast cancer or heart disease, but we just don't hear about it because there are about 80 to 100 different types of them, and no one really brings them together. You can take Lyme disease, Crohn's, lupus, ME, what have you, but each of them are segregated and they're separate. So, okay, so those are some horrible stats. That's me trying to scare you, but also trying to see how we can work with it. Why are those things true? That's because the most dominant course of treatment for someone with an autoimmune condition is to go through immunosuppressants and even chemotherapy, both of which I am on. But people don't necessarily talk about, and what I especially find interesting, like I mentioned, I'm from India, is that there isn't an institute or an organization in the whole of Europe looking at autoimmune diseases as a whole. There is one in America, but then they of course have a vested interest because the healthcare costs and the economics of it is completely different. after doing it for 2 years, since 2014, last year, I was picked up by the British Council, who said they were really interested in the project, and that's when I recognized that, okay, so we've got like such a huge archive of stories, we know there are certain problems, there's no one solving them, so what could I do about it? What could we do about it? How could I build something that would actually be helpful? And that's how the Invisible Labs came to be, which is supported and funded by different organizations who've been really generous and helpful. That's essentially the fundamental question in terms of like, can we reimagine health? A health that isn't binary, a health that isn't healthy and unhealthy. I mean, I wake up some days where I feel great, and the other days I don't feel so great. So how could I communicate? And how could I communicate to someone that, where I tell them, if you give me a salad, that will literally send me to the A&E? Like, I'm not kidding. That's actually a fact. So we've come up with different ways of dealing with it. One is something I relate to very closely, is the Crohn's Eat Out map, where, as I discovered, people know what a vegan diet is. No one knows what an IBD-friendly diet is. And that is probably excusable because it varies so much per person. However, there are some very few things that are quite common, such as you would never give wholemeal bread to someone with IBD. So, but I still don't know why that isn't familiar. So we're trying to build, we have a prototype on the website, but we're building an app that looks at Crohn's map in different cities where you can actually go eat with your friends, be social, and try to live a normal life, even if you have all of these conditions. And trying to talk to restaurants is a really weird thing, where they go like, wait, so you don't like vegetables? Like, no, that'll kill me. No, well, you should eat vegetables. No, you're not getting the point. A more interesting thing is the Invisible Health Data Project, which are working with Innovate UK and the Franklin Institute, who are known for their cancer research. But anyway, is looking at what I realized, and I started my talk with, was looking at how there are certain requirements that a doctor looks at when you say, like, if I go in and I say I've been feeling like shit for like the whole month, sorry, I swear, they'll probably say, well, your inflammatory markers aren't that high, so it's fine. When you go worse, we look at you. But what they don't recognize is that there are some incredibly debilitating everyday symptoms that, in fact, deteriorate the quality of life of someone with an autoimmune disease. So that's really the mission behind the Invisible Health Data Project, where we're trying to find out what are those invisible symptoms, how prevalent are they, and the most interesting part is, how do they relate to one another? Or are there some shared symptoms? We haven't finished it all, but I can tell you that irregular bowel movements aren't necessarily something that only people with IBD relate to, but also those with Lyme disease find is very common, because it connects with the neural pathway and makes them think that they have to go even though they don't really have to. So it's really interesting. So would you actually give someone disabled toilet access to someone who also has Lyme disease or not? So it has very very prevalent social significance in terms of how we treat and relate to people with autoimmune diseases. So that's really been, I don't come from a science background unless you count growing up in hospitals. So, which I think should matter. No one ever listens to me when I tell them to use like a butterfly needle on my veins. Like, I know which needle works on my veins, but no one ever listens. So what we're trying to do is essentially bring the focus onto the patient. Like, I completely understand you need to keep the person, the organism alive, but however, if they're not able to go back to a life that they're happy to, I don't really see a point in keeping someone alive. And I know that's pretty harsh, but if you made me redundant to a bed, I don't necessarily think I'd be too pleased. And making data human. I'm sorry. I'm almost done. This is like my last slide. So, one of the things I found was the reason why I asked you what is an autoimmune condition is that people know, oh, Selena Gomez has Lyme lupus, one of those. But like, what is it? What does that mean? Like, even some of my closest friends don't necessarily know, what does my life look like with AS? What does my life look like not being able to use one of my lungs? What does my life look like with Crohn's? Like, they have no idea what it means. So this idea of knowing, like, no one's going to read a huge medical journal, even though I might be a nerd, I love it, but I don't expect the general public to read it. So how can we make data more accessible? And finding solutions to the everyday problems, which might be someone with Lyme who maybe ran into the tube station wanting to sit in the disabled seat. How do you justify this? Or the design solutions we can find for it. So that's really the things that we're working with in terms of building tools and coming up with designs to help implement in different places. And and I am almost done. There are some of my details. If you know someone with an invisible autoimmune condition or just want to know more, I would love to listen.